who just spoke.
I want to hear from Frank Rose, how much he weighs right now. He's not talking.
Keith Hannon, I know that you are muted. I'm going to give it 2 more minutes. We're at 38 participants.
Sounds good.
It looks
That's
like
a great
cold
picture,
there, Chris
Mabley.
Williams.
That's a 1964 squad.
Greg Underwood, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Haven't seen you in a few years.
Sacramento was the last time, right?
It was, yeah. I've still got a picture of that right up here in my bookcase.
Fun time.
Greg, it's good. It's good to see you.
You
This
as
is
well.
Chris Mabley.
Hello,
Matthews.
Rosedale. Wonderful to see you.
Todd, how are you doing on Ira's Pinnacle?
We're fine, thank you, Chris.
Well, we made it to
remind
New
us-
Hampshire.
I
Yeah,
know, and
great.
you have a minus point awaiting you.
I accept it.
I think Larry Dean is just joining us. Larry Dean's just joining us.
Who was that in New Hampshire and where?
Chris Mabley. I came up here from Texas about 4 days ago to get away from Austin.
Do you have a place up here or not?
Yes, we do. In the Ospey Mountains.
Oh, okay. We're over at Sunapee.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron Kay, haven't seen you in a while.
A while.
How do you get to see everybody? What do I do to do this? Press it.
Click on gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't get gallery. for
Up in the
some
right
reason.
corner.
Oh,
You go on to the pictures, Todd. You
okay.
can scroll up to the top and there's a function that you can click that has multiple dots on it.
Dave Stout.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
my goodness. Hey,
That's
Dave.
right.
On the picture. Okay, now
Okay.
go see what they say.
Sure.
And I've lost 10 pounds in the last 3 months, but I'm still 90 pounds over racing weight.
Okay.
And
Phil
there's
has that
Todd.
Ratzenberg shirt.
Chris, I don't see the gallery view on our screen.
Yeah, I can't get it either because I think Chris has got it on screen share. And if he takes it off screen share, I think he can.
I succeeded getting it into gallery view.
Who is?
The
This is
J.
good.
Abbey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it worked for me. There's this.
Yeah, I've got 6 pictures. Here,
Yeah,
I
I've
can
got it on the
stretch
right
it.
side,
Oh, yeah.
But you
I'm
can usually take
stretching
a,
it. If you
I
get it,
got that.
okay, I just stretched it and now I have about 12 pictures on it. And I can stretch it some more and get more than, well, 12 is about the most.
Yeah, that's right. Shrink,
oh, there you go. I got it. Hey,
shrink Kerber's screen.
I got it. I got it. I got it. That's good. Yeah.
No,
Okay, it's 7:10, folks. We're gonna get started here in just a few seconds. I'm gonna mute everybody
shows the person who's talking.
except for Keith Hannon and myself. As we ask for speakers, and the first couple of speakers are, we're gonna have, I'm gonna be the first speaker with a lead in from Keith. I'm gonna ask Paul Tregertha to say some words as I introduce Walt Schlepfer. Walt Schlepfer will take the helm and talk about some of the things of his years. And then we may have some other speakers come along.
Sorry.
I'll be introducing those as we go along, so nobody has to remember anything.
Options.
So Keith, how do I mute everybody?
I can help you out with that. You go to
It's down.
Lower left.
Oh, wait, here it is. Mute all. All
Yeah.
right. I'm shutting you all up. Kathy Evans has said she would like
much time for everything.
mute all. All right, here we go. Keith, you're on.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our 37th rowing Zoom of the last 2 months. No, I'm just kidding. It hasn't been that many, but thanks for everyone who's attended our several Zoom sessions regarding rowing and for coming back again. Really looking forward to tonight's presentation from Coach Kerber. Also want to thank everyone on the meeting tonight who stepped up in a big way and supported the rowing program this year. Many of you may know. I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you get any emails from us about the fundraising deadlines. I know you do. Just kidding. But thank you so much for your generosity. This is the last day of the fiscal year, and rowing has hit its number this year, and we greatly appreciate everyone who continues to pledge their support to this historic program that continues to offer just a transformational experience for our student athletes who carry this with them for a lifetime, as you all know. And I look forward to hearing some of those stories tonight. Just some, and if you didn't get an email, let us know. We'll update your information, and we'll have Todd call you tonight, maybe. So, but we will, I just want to give you some kind of Zoom 101 here. If you take the mouse on your screen and you look at the bottom, and you scroll over the bottom of your page, you'll see options for chat. And if you click that chat, it's gonna bring up the little chat box, and you can drop in a message to everyone that's in the meeting, or you can, in that little to section, you can hit the select the where it says everyone, and it gives you actually individuals in which you can send a direct private message to anybody you want in the meeting. But just to test it out, we like to ask everyone to say type in your name and your class year and where you're joining us from. And that creates a nice little log of everyone that's here today and where you're at around the country or around the world. We hope you're safe. We hope you're healthy. Thanks for joining us. Any other technical questions that pop up during the presentation here tonight, you can just type in to that chat and I'll help you out, or you can message me directly. And as you have questions about anything you hear or comments, feel free to use the chat box, and we will go back to it at the end and make sure everything gets answered if we don't answer it in real time. I think that's about it from me. I, again, just want to say for me and everyone at athletics, from Andy Noel, from the coaches and the alumni volunteers who've also been calling you and sending you messages, we really appreciate everything you've done for the program again this year. And we're excited that we announced today that students are coming back onto campus September 2nd. So we will have all the kids back in person. So we're excited about that, and we'll hear more about how it will impact athletics, hopefully in the next week at the latest. So I'm sure you'll all be brought in on that. That's enough for me. It's all yours, Coach Kerber.
Keith, thanks very much. I would just pass through the gratitude for all that are participating tonight. We're just about 40 people tonight, which is outstanding. 40 Cornell lightweights, including Todd Kennett, who had a tenure as coach here as well for a number of years. Also like to thank many of the current student athletes who are on board tonight. I think about 15 or 17 of them chimed in, which is very, very great. They'll get to see and hear the history. I also want to thank Bill Brumstead, the associate head coach of the lightweights, my partner in crime for doing what we do. He's been a part of the Cornell lightweights for 6 years, and I'm delighted to be working with him even during these times. And I know these times are definitely odd, without a doubt. But the way that we have kind of reconfigured things, opened up the history books, taken these nights, these hours, maybe 70 minutes to review some of the history, get some of the history correct on the Cornell website. And I thank many of you who have contributed some of the history, been on the phone with me for the last 5 days, just hearing all the wonderful stories, but also how they kind of fit into the larger picture of the C-150s, around the leadership, around the culture. We can definitely learn from the history, learn from the innovation that coaches and athletes had taken in the past. We can certainly listen to and hear about the technique or the training methods that we have. And we're going to walk through this very slowly. And we hope to put a little more, here comes Frank Rose, put a little more meat on the bones from what you see right in front of you as far as this PowerPoint. I want to thank Jamie Cashin, who helped me with these 2 logos tonight and allowed them to be a little bit grainy, but they fit nicely in. This is the old Cornell logo with the old Cornell ore and our new C-150, a sticker that we have. If I ever see you face to face, I'm probably going to be shoving those C-150 stickers in your pocket, asking you to distribute them amongst yourselves, your grandchildren, or other colleagues in the crew. Anyway, I wanted to open it up by talking a little bit about these 2 decades, kind of strategically. When I asked for themes and for stories, the 60s crew came through in a big way. There's a lot of legacy there. There's a lot of success. And what I found out, I'd say about 10 days ago, was that we were a little lean on the 50s crew. So I reached out to some key people: Bill Kingston, Paul Tregurtha, Tom Steiner, class of 55, Walt Schlepper, class of 51. And I began to uncover what I would see as a series of themes through these years.
If it works, even.
This is Carl Volkman right there. Hi, Carl. Can you see us, Carl? Yes. All right. I'm going to move to the next page here. I think the 50s can't start without a hat tip to the 49 crew that had a terrific regular season, beating all the crews of the EARC at that time. Their application to Henley was denied and they weren't able to go. But the guy who emerged kind of as one of the many key figures there was this guy named Carl Ulrich. And when you Google Carl Ulrich, you'll see a Wikipedia page that talks about this man's life that began in the bow of the lightweight crew back in the 40s. Right after he graduated from a mechanical engineering degree, he went OCS for the Marine Corps, served his country over in Korea, leading large groups of men, retired as a lieutenant captain. He was handpicked by Stork Stanford to be the heavyweight freshman coach in 1956. And I believe this piece was probably a fulcrum point, an inflection point for the entire boathouse. Lou Evans talks about when he looks back at the history. Lou Evans is the class of '63. In the late 50s and the early 60s, the boathouse was a happy place. It was a happy boathouse. Stork had his man, Carl Ulrich, a leader. There is also this sense of while lightweights were the last ones onto the water and the last ones into the cold showers, there was still a sense of determined bunch of athletes. And this, to me, represents a page out of a leadership book, and the page is called Followership. Everybody knew their place. Everybody was doing their job. Everybody was on the same page with the mission. Whether you had hot water, whether you had towels or not, that is probably the piece that's very, very important for me. Carl went on, and it was understood that many of his freshman crews were quite good in the 50s. He was revered, and his legacy goes into the 60s. And Chris Mabley's going to tell a little story a little later on about when even Carl was at Columbia coaching there, and how his crew put Carl Ulrich's name on a boat and honored him. Give me 1 second. I just got to turn the page here. Here we go. The same year, in 1956, Walt Schleffer was hired as the head of the lightweights. He would go on to coach for 7 years, the lightweights. That consistency was important as far as a foothold, a handhold for the success that would happen with the lightweights later on. I think Todd Kennett today will say, and even Bill Brumstead would say, Cornell became relevant in the late 90s and early 2000s because of the commitment of the university. Full-time salary, maybe a paid assistant coach, things like that. Walt Schleffer said his first year, he got $250 in 1956. His second year, he got $250 to coach the crew. This tells me a lot more than somebody's dedication to a paycheck. His third year, he was recognized, and he got $500. He was recognized. Today, I had a great conversation with Paul, and I'm getting ready to have Paul come on and talk a little bit about the atmosphere in the boathouse, Walt's first varsity, Walt's leadership style. And if we may unmute him, Keith. There he is. Ask to unmute. Paul, the microphone is yours. If I can, there he goes. Well, I muted you by accident. Sorry. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. Well, I was fortunate to have been going to Cornell about the right time. Had I gone a little bit earlier, I would not have been under the coaching of Walt Schleffer, who I guess is going to speak in a little bit. And he's still the same wonderful person today that he was when we rode for him. And most of, I don't know where it cuts off on the age group here, but I may well be with one or two of the others, the oldest ones on tonight. And we can remember a boathouse that probably most of you could never imagine. And starting to row as a walk-on, which was wonderful, and I'm glad to hear they still do that today at Cornell. The old rowing machine was, think of a 4-foot log, think of a baseball bat, a little bit longer, stuck in a bucket of almost concrete. And it was down in the old place where the swimming pool was. And I mean, that was your exercise. And then think of it as it progressed. They were just opening up the tanks in Sholkoff, which was an incredible improvement. And there were no erg machines or anything else. So in those days, you couldn't measure power by anything scientific. So Walt would have us row off, which was always something you didn't look forward to. And it would start, as always have, and you're still doing it, I'm sure, shell against shell, bow against stern, 4 against 4. And then it would get down to the stroke and the 7. And Bill Burke was our stroke and I was number 7. And of course you had to row everybody else and you rowed side by side with the other crew. And that's how they really ultimately determined strength. And then he'd do it, the boiler house, the middle of the shell against the other shell. And through that, he picked the people that he wanted and was fortunate enough to, row in the varsity crew my last year in 1957. And, I learned a lot from Walt, and I think we all did. Going back to the boathouse, it was there's always a challenge. I'm sure you guys all had it between the fats and the lights. And one of the joys was to race against them, which we always did, and I hope you still are. And we were pretty damn good for about 85% or 90% of the race. And then all of a sudden, the gas went out and they took over. But that was great competition. And we had, even though there were feelings between the lights and the fats, we were all good friends, dedicated to one thing. And fortunately, the competition was really against other teams. That's what we were focused on. And boy, Walt did a wonderful job of getting us ready for that. And I guess I could tell one story that was important for me in life. I mean, dedication and never quitting for everybody on this Zoom tonight. You don't need to talk about dedication and how you learned that from rowing, and anything you do in life with no quitting, you never quit. But this was the AARC's, it was senior year. We had won every race up to that. And we're down in Annapolis. And there were 2 things that happened. The night before, I couldn't sleep. As you know, you had to lose weight to qualify. And I should have always been weighed the day before, or the day of the race, 5 minutes before, because I usually spend most of them, got so nervous at night that I'd spend most of the morning on the pot. But the night before, I couldn't sleep. And it's really helped me the rest of my life. Walt came along and just said, if you would shut up and be quiet and don't say a word and just lie there, even if you look at the ceiling, you're going to get 90% of the value of if you had slept the whole night. And the rest of my life, when I can't sleep, I just kind of, don't get excited about it. Just kind of calm down, look at the ceiling, and usually have a pretty darn good day the next day. But the next day didn't turn out so good. We were racing in Annapolis. The Coast Guard let a powerboat get by. And we were probably, Jim Rosbo may be able to remember it even better. But we were the farthest from the shore. And we were leading, probably we were 85% of the way to the goal line. We're winning. and this boat comes by, and we just caught crabs, the whole side of the boat. So did the person next to us, next to us, next to us, next to us. And the guy who was closest to the shore was the one who won, because the wake had just dribbled down to nothing then. And that was the year, if we had won, we would have gone to Hangley. We had our hearts set on it. And so that was I hope not many of you have ever had to experience that. And of course, you don't run the race over. And so that was it. But Walt kept us all together, kept our spirits up, and of course went on then the next year to have another super winning crew. So I have nothing but great memories and incredible respect for Walt. And he had many, many very successful seasons after us. And there were one other or two other little reflections. Our crew was made up of probably half seniors or maybe less, and guys from who were a year behind us, who had really come up strong. And it shows how, you keep working, keep training, you can move up to that first boat. And so it was a great experience for me, as I'm sure it has been for all of you. And, maybe Jim, you might have Jim Rospo, you might have a recollection or two. Jim, if you don't, I'm going to.
So I did remember that Bill Burke was a stroke, and I rode with him pretty much freshman, JV, and for the final one. And so I miss him, because he and I would sit back there and plot the whole race, and we were almost a length ahead of Princeton when that wave hit us, and we just stopped dead. So there was no way to recover. But Walt was good. He told us it's part of life, and I'm still trying to win. I'm still racing. I do triathlons, sprint triathlons, and I'm old enough that there's no competition.
That's awesome, Jim. Appreciate the contributions, Jim and Paul. I'd like to just go to the next frame here. Just talk a little bit about Walt, who was in the Air Force and resigned in 1955, class of 51, served his country, worked overseas. One of the things Walt says is when he joined the staff, thanks to Carl Ulrich, his most important contribution was the expectation around leadership and his contribution. So it's a beautiful thing. And he went on for a number of years, 22 wins and 35 races. Just a wonderful, wonderful record, not only in his wins, but his second places. You can see that picture there of him in the bow of the boat there, the Schlepfer 2, which was our first varsity boat to be raced this year. It is now still sitting, guts up, ready to go onto the water to this day from March 13th, when we basically broke camp. It's pointing towards the water. It is a wonderful shell, and it was an honor to dedicate it. The picture below is Lou Evans there on the left side, Walt in the middle, and Carl Ulrich on the right side there. Walt, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you. You can contribute as you like. He has some stories that we reviewed today, but Walt, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a real honor to be
part of this program, and you guys conjured up a lot of nice things to say about me. I'm very grateful, and I'll wrap them up and put them in my Halloween basket. So, anyhow, I was asked to contribute something either interesting or special, and we still have to be introduced to Todd Jesdale, who ultimately, long-term, became my replacement and did an amazing job with his cruise. I had a couple of personal experiences with him that I cannot vacate because they're just there. And the first one is, I'd say that in his sophomore year, around in February, when the crews were returning for their spring training in the tanks, Todd didn't show up for practice, and I let it go for a few days, and he still didn't. He just still didn't show up for practice. So I asked his teammates, "Well, where's Todd?" And oh, he's decided he doesn't want to row anymore. He's quit. I said, "Thank you." And that evening, I found out where he lives. He lives in a very nice fraternity house. Okay. And I went up and called on him. And we had, I don't remember a word of what we said, but it was a very positive conversation. And that was the end of it. He was at practice the next day, never came up again, and hasn't come up again. He doesn't remember it, I don't think, but that's his problem. The high part of this whole story is that if we had lived with his first decision, Cornell would not have had the benefit of years and years of amazing coaching. And for that, I take all the credit. So here we are, and he's come along and done a lot, and I have nothing but admiration for him, for his style, for his love of his kids. And so that's the way that is. There was another little side story around him in that same period when the crews went through spring break practice. And the practice then was that we take 2 long weekends at the beginning of spring break and 2 long weekends at the end of spring break. And the first one that would be taken off would be the heavies. They would take the break in the first part of the week, and then they would do their practice in the latter part of the week. And that was obviously designed to wish for better water after at the time. And nobody had any questions about that. That's just the way it was. And so on this particular weekend, we had the first weekend off. So our kids, scattered, and we didn't see them until the following Monday morning. And everybody was there. We had our long week of practice and everything. And we found out about Todd. He's had spent his weekend off in Boston. He had friends there and did whatever he did there. But he also went out for lightweight crew with Harvard. And they didn't find his name on the sheet or anything, but they took him on. And by the end of his 3 days there, he had already reached their JV crew. And so it's the end of the week, and he comes back to Ithaca. The next day, his coach is going crazy. Where is he? You know, he really needs him, and he's not there anymore. So that was Todd, and I think it's very exciting. He had the courage to do that and enjoy life a little bit. So I'm done.
Well, thank you for that. I know that that is a bit of lore, and I think Todd will be coming up shortly to maybe refute those, maybe add some meat onto the bones of the story of either. But thank you, Walt. He's Walt's a guy who emails all the time, talks about for fame of alma mater. He'll put in signed Walt for fame of alma mater. The reason why you're here is to do it for Cornell. A real mentor, not only to myself, but Bill Brumstead, many of the other men on the team. We sang happy birthday, 90th birthday to him last year when he turned 90. Everybody said, happy birthday, Walt. We had a good time doing that. So thank you, Walt Schlepfer. And we're looking forward to racing that Schlepfer 2 in 2020 and 2021. So thank you for that. I'm going to move the program on if I can. The next slide here. Oops. Walt led the crew for a number of years, and also through this this nuance of the lightweight league, which was the 1962 three-way tie. No finish line cameras that year. Well, next year they got one. Three-way tie between Navy, MIT, and Cornell. You can see the names of the men here in the crew. And I was wondering if I could impromptu talk to Chuck Bunting, who was a contributor to this. If you wouldn't mind, Chuck. There's a number of people on here who could talk about that. Jay Abbey's on tonight, Craig Underwood. Can you describe that day, or maybe how Walt walked you through it when you got off the water? Let me unmute him. How do I do that? There he is, Chuck. I think he's speaking. Chuck, can you unmute? There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, have at it, Chuck.
It was an unbelievable experience. You know, we had just a bunch of us, two of us in that boat. Jim and I had gone to Henley the year before after having a almost win at the Eastern Sprints. And so when Walt came back as coach, and he put together this boat and conned me into moving from starboard to port. And I was able to do it. And we had this boat together and we go up to the sprints. And, you know, we're basically almost winning the whole race. Navy was close to us. I think we had the lead. And all of a sudden, at the very, whatever, few strokes, MIT snuck up on us. But I can guarantee you that if there was a finish line camera, we were ahead at the finish line. I was up there in the front of the boat. I know we were ahead. But it was a wonderful way. I didn't realize until now that it was Walt's last year as the lightweight varsity coach. And what a wonderful way to pay tribute to Walt that we were able to do that his last year of coaching.
I've just added in Jay. Would you like to comment being the bowman first across the line?
Well, in contrast to Chuck, I don't have an opinion other than it was damn close. And I do have this recollection that there was some analysis from some photos looking at the straightness of the three crews' tracks, over the last, several hundred yards. But that analysis didn't really lead anywhere either, of course. And as we all know, it led to the decision to institute photo finishing equipment in subsequent years. But I certainly agree with you, Chuck. It certainly seemed like for the bulk of the race we were ahead, and I think the record or the photos show that. But I know I felt delighted that we we were first, even if there were two other firsts at the same time. So. There were 27 happy people in that regard, but it was an exciting event and never to be forgotten.
Thank you for those contributions. I really appreciate the storytelling. As we move into 63, a recent grad, a guy in grad school, a guy named Terry Gardner took over the crew with these skeletons of 62. The 63 guys wanted to set the record straight. Terry Gardner was a coxswain who had came through the engineering school getting his master's. Took on some innovation around training, definitely understood the intervals training. Had the vantage point like no other coach as being a coxswain and seeing the blades from the stern, whether it be the blades going to the water, in the water, coming out of the water, or the slide speed on the recovery by just analyzing the blades. He had 4 years. He had won the sprints, had been to Henley in 61. He also had the benefit of two men from the heavyweight bay, Tony Taylor and Doug Kenyon. And sometimes this happens in a boathouse with heavyweights and lightweights. There's a migration one way or the other, happens all the time with that. And I think that gave some advantage. The other thing about 63, it was a great year in the Cornell history, not only the lightweight history, but the lightweight swept 1V, 2V, and freshmen, but also the heavyweight 8-1 as well. But interestingly enough, again, going back to Paul Tregurtha's comment, and nothing malicious, it was just the standard at the boathouse. Stork cared about the heavyweights. He didn't care about the lightweights. It was his priority. his focus. Yep, and that meant cold showers coming off the water late, no dry towels, you know. But I think that happy boathouse theme came back, and was continually was reestablished. That everybody was on the same page, where they were, determined, perform at the highest level, which is, you know, when you look at leadership, probably one of the biggest themes that I'm a big fan of is followership, and that is being a good follower, knowing where you are, contributing to the success of everyone, not pulling at the strings for whatever reason of you know, the mission for whatever reason. Anyway, I had a great conversation with Terry today, and I'm wondering if Craig Underwood would walk through maybe just a few features of not only 63, Craig Underwood, but also maybe I can lean on the 64 inflection point when Todd came on, Todd Jesdale. Craig, are you on and can you hear me? Craig Underwood.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there he is. Hey, Craig.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
So 63, you got fire in your belly from 62, the three-way tie. Give us a sense of that small campaign.
Well, a lot of it, of course, was a blur, except, you know, winning the sprints and then going on to Henley. That was certainly an exhilarating experience. And we, of course, were over there with the heavyweights. So we did some training together, and, you know, it was fun to scrimmage with the heavyweights at one time when one day we went out, and at least my recollection, whether it's true or not, we beat the heavyweights in every single scrimmage. Stork wasn't real happy with that, so he took us out on the course a day or two later and whipped us soundly just to make sure we knew where we were. But that was probably a good experience, because when we ended up racing Queens College Cambridge, they were truly heavyweights compared to us. And Lou Evans recalls that they came down from the Grand Challenge Cup because they saw the Germans were going to be there. So we were certainly outweighed in that class. And then, of course, 64 was pretty much a magical year. We were undefeated and won the sprints by such a margin that the finish line photo only showed us in the photo. Those are pretty much my recollection.
Thanks, Craig. Always enjoy your contributions. As we move into 64.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Before you
Who's
go
that?
to 60, it's Chris Mabley.
Yeah.
Could I tell a story about Terry Gardner?
Yes, for sure. Go ahead, Chris Mabley.
Yeah. When we lost to MIT at the during the regular season in 63 at a home race, and Terry decided we needed to do something different. And I think it was the Monday practice after that race. We got our boat out and put it in the water, and each one of us had a sign on our stretcher. Mine read, "Can you outrow and outpull Mark Barron and Galen Brewster?" And Mark Barron was the stroke of the MIT boat. Galen Brewster was the stroke of the Harvard boat. And for the rest of my season, I watched that, I saw that little sign every stroke of the practice. And I think that incentive was one of the reasons why we found about 3/4 of a length plus 5 feet to come back and beat them at the sprints. And I want to thank Terry for that very insightful mental game that he played with us.
Outstanding. Terry told me the story of the chat that he gave that crew the morning of sprints, and just the few words he had, not only of probably the race strategy, but how they wanted to finish the day on top. And I think they all had, like we all did when we rode, some fire, maybe some vinegar in the belly, and that's what drives us. That's what pushes us. Thanks again, Chris. As we do get into the year 1964, some of the tales around it was I think what happened the year before at sprints when the Ratzenberg crew came over and raced. I think Todd Jesdale observed a crew paddling, and this was an important piece, learning how to move the boat at very low speeds with your blade work and awareness of the crew inside the boat is important. And I think when you look at an 11-second victory, technically, from the way the crew rows, the training that they do, I think is probably the biggest component of that. This low intensity training of paddling, maybe paddling in between intervals, understanding the way the crew and the boat's moving with the water, very, very important. Also, he saw the German crew playing with their rigging and their gearing, something that I failed upon last year, my own sort of changing the gearing depending on the conditions. It's a very tricky thing. Bill Brumstead and Bruce Rogoff will attest to last year's 2019 sprints 7th place finish because of that. But Chris, would you like to talk a little bit more about that 64? And then we're going to hand the mic over to Todd Jesdale. That is an important piece of innovation. Finding something that's going to fit, and you go after it, and it becomes culture on the team. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I will just tell 2 quick vignettes about both 64 and 65. 64 was a magical year because we raced MIT and Columbia, I believe, in New York, and we had not a very good race, and it was a lot closer than we anticipated. I think we were rushed and we didn't have a lot of rhythm, but we knew we were fast. And then we woke, when we got up in the afternoon at the sprints, and having been seated first and won our heat, we felt really comfortable because there was a headwind, and we knew that we rode much better than in a headwind than in a tailwind, because we were long and strong and smooth, and we had a good ratio. And I think we just got into a swing and just moved away stroke by stroke. And Harvard actually took the lead at the start, and then we rode through them, and about 1,000-meter mark, we were open water ahead. And by the time we got close to the sprint, I remember Dick Bluestein calling for a sprint, and we were about 10 seconds ahead. And I gasped, "No, please, no." I don't want to go up higher. And so I don't think we did, but we ended up winning by 11 seconds. And then the quick story about 65, another magical year, and Todd will probably tell a lot more. But the one thing I remember that I think is worth mentioning, because we talked about Carl Ulrich, that Carl Ulrich was coaching Columbia, and this is the way I remember the story. And one of his team, we heard, had been smoking, and so he kicked them off the squad. And another couple of oarsmen came up to him and said, "Coach, you can't kick him off the squad because we're smoking too." And he said, "Okay, well, you guys are gone as well." And that's at least how we heard the story. And because of that, we said that mentality of coaching is consistent with our mentality as oarsmen, and we want to dedicate our shell to Carl Ulrich that year. And that was the reason why, in my recollection, we named the shell after him. And he was there for that dedication with, and it was a real honor given his legacy at Cornell, but also what he stood for as a coach at Columbia. So I'm done, Christopher. So it's all back to you.
Thank you,
and maybe
Christopher
someone else
Mabley.
wants to add.
I think hearing that story about standards, just having standards, and there's no argument, especially when it comes to rules, policy, regulations, people that maybe not bought into the culture of what everybody else is. That's an honest, good, honest, not so much courageous coach's decision, but obvious one that had an impact on the 65 crew. And so thank you for that. Todd, I know your time has come to maybe speak about some of those times, 60, 64, 65, some broad brushstrokes, some big themes. The microphone is yours, Todd Jesdale. He's on mute.
I'm unmuted.
Win.
You'll regret this. First, my year of graduation is 61, not 62. I was a slow learner, but there you go. Walt, one time when I was, I don't know what year, junior year or something, there was a big fraternity weekend, and I was legitimately sick on the Monday, not with inebriation. And I came to you and I said, I'm sick. And I said, I wasn't involved with the partying. And you said to me, it's a life lesson. I know that. I know you guys. So that's that. Chris Mabley, you left out a wonderful story from 65 when we went to race in Boston, and MIT had put with a really indelible marker, piss on Mabley on all their urinals.
I've seen it.
And that was the end of that race. And let's see, there are other rebuttals to come, but I can't remember what they are. One of my great mistakes, Chris Kerber, as a coach, was in 64 believing that the Thames Cup was out of our reach. We didn't go, and the men wanted to go, and I said no. And that it's a forgivable mistake. I was 23, but it was a serious lifetime mistake, and it was a very bad mistake. And apologies to those guys. It's so much fun to see these kids, or excuse me, old retired men. So much love to all.
Thank you, Todd. I do appreciate the contributions, impromptu as they are, but any good coach is ready for a question or a chance to be of presence. There's a few pieces of history in the next couple of years and all the way through these 2 decades that I'm committed to making sure we get proper notes on the Cornell website, which states the outcomes of some races. There's some missing years in there which need to be honored during these off-season weeks and months. I'm gathering a fair bit of these contributions, and we're gonna get it on there. Get some fresh pictures and things like that. So I'm very excited about that. Knowing some of these stories that we have, some of the facts or the legends or the lore, maybe the truth may be stretched a bit, and I think we're all big enough in heart and mind to accept that and have some laughs around that. So thank you. We're in the last few years here. I'm going to call upon Chris Williams here, kind of the heart and soul of the 67 crew. We spoke very impromptu today. He said, "Give me the baton when you need it." Has a lot of history. The 67 crew, which is the storybook crew in the boathouse, winning all races by open water. These 5 seniors who really trusted each other, really pushed through and went on to win Henley, which is tremendous. Chris, can I hand the microphone over to you? You're on mute.
I first want to say how humbled I am listening to everybody else that paved the way for 67. Particularly Chris Mabley, you probably don't know, well, you had a kind of a yin and yang effect. Yeah, I knew you were a marvelous stroke and I hated you for that because you had such a great record. So starting with our freshman year, Lou Evans built a nucleus of rowers that congealed remarkably well. We had a good crew. We got beaten twice by Columbia in the sprints. We caught a full crab. There was still this nucleus that hung together. I think we always felt we were underdogs no matter where we went. We came together in 67 with 2 sophomores, a junior, and all the rest were from our freshman class. And it was I mean, Todd is a magnificent coach. He could see stuff nobody else could see, but you could also, as a stroke, and the other strokes here will testify to it, you could feel it too. And when you felt it and that boat was moving, it was just a phenomenal event. Henley was almost anticlimactic because we went to Rotzeburg beforehand. And that was an experience that I think validated the crew in terms of how fast and how good it was. Remember, Rotzeburg went on to win the Olympics the following year, and we lost to them by 4 lengths, which is not too shabby. And we had the Marietta crew that had won the Dad Vale that we beat them by 3 lengths, and the next day we beat them by 5 lengths. So Henley ended up being I guess the first few races, and Ron will probably come in on this, or they were messy because we had to go so slow in a sense, and I wondered whether we should have been in another division, but we got through the races. We had the semifinal, which was our toughest race. Todd told us it was going to be our toughest race. I did not listen to him. And at the end of the race, I deliberately closed my mouth and breathed through my nose to show that I wasn't tired. The other half of the boat had worked very hard, by the way. But when it came to the finals, we were able to really put it on. And I think the scoreboard says that we were behind at Folly. I never believed it, but perhaps we were. And but from that point forward, we just kept moving forward and won by a bunch. I think the most moving experience, and I think the 68 crew had it also, of Henley really is rowing down the course to the starting line for the finals race. And you can hear the crowd, you can appreciate the crowd, you're inside the booms. It's just a real honor to do that. And then to turn around, obviously, and come back up. But it's a unique event. We were, in some ways we were lucky. We were, we had a great bunch of teammates. I mean, Dave Stout's in the panel next to me. I looked him up. I don't know what he weighed in at during the season, but at Henley he was 186 pounds. We had Dennis Coase, I think, was at 177. But I looked at the weights, and overall, we were not that far off 65. I did get to go in 65 as a spare, so Henley wasn't, a totally new experience. Dennis Coase had gone as well. We've lost, the two huge players in that boat. Bill Cromwell, who coached a little bit, suffered from schizophrenia, and I have never been so torn up when I found out about his death. It tore me up. I mean, I sobbed. So that's how close oarsmen get in a boat. And then Dennis, of course, he died, and Eric Loberg, who was a great friend of mine, and rode with where is in the seniors. So we were always joking about it. He said, I have a lot more medals than you, and I said, yeah, but I've got the Henley medal. So he couldn't trade any of those in for that. And Dennis unfortunately lost his medal, so I don't know. He never did find out what happened to it. But again, in listening to everybody else talk, we really benefited from everybody else's experience, and I appreciate it very much.
Ron, any contributions? Ron K.
Yeah, I can say something, Chris, particularly about something you said earlier about recognizing a different style, paddling and intervals and so on. Over the years, I've thought many, many, many times about why 67 won undefeated and other great crews didn't. And what's the difference? We had great coaching in those days. We did have leadership, particularly in the stroke and 7-seat. Both had experience coming in. As Chris was just saying, the crew was not small by the time we got to Henley. It averaged out about 172. And the smallest guy was 6 foot, tallest guy was 6'5". So it had some size, not to compete in today's heavyweights, but at that time, competitive. But so what was the difference? I had the advantage of being in the 66 varsity boat as a coxswain and also in the 67 boat. 66 was good enough to win the sprints, but didn't. They lost to Harvard. And of course, 67 went on. What was the difference? Well, I've come down, the difference was by the time we got through the sprints in 67, and we had all that time between the sprints and Henley, that boat became extremely proficient and skilled at converting energy into speed. I mean, by the time we got to Henley, there really wasn't much coaching to be done. It was just plain fun. And I heard Chris Williams just say that when that boat was really flying, which was frequently during that period between the sprints and Henley, it almost seemed effortless until you stopped rowing, of course, and you couldn't get your breath. But when the boat was moving, it just was extremely proficient. Maybe it was all those seniors being together. I'm sure it was the coaching, because most of us never had any experience prior to Henley and prior to coming to Cornell. So what was the difference? I really think that long time on the water between the sprints and Henley, I mean, I just had a joy in that boat. It was so much fun. And what tripped out in my mind was Chris Kerber talking about paddling and getting a feel in the boat. Every day we went to practice, that's what it was. Every single day, that boat just flew. Chris Williams was talking about Ratzeburg in Germany, and I've told stories before, but I'll keep it brief. We were racing in a heavyweight shell in Ratzeburg because our shell didn't come with us, and it was offset rigged. It was the first time we'd ever been in a German shell other than a Pocock, a German design shell. And again, the boat just flew. I mean, it was so proficient, blade work, slide work, everything. And we owed a lot to the coaching. But I really do think all these guys just happened to be 8 guys that came together that learned how to row. So I had a blast, an absolute blast. And I remember every single bit of it during that time.
That's a beauty, Ron K. Thanks for that. Davey Stout, you want to hop on, unmute yourself? Another guy from that crew.
You know, the amazing thing about this group is how bonded we feel. And if you think about the emotions that cover 20 years, it's tremendous. If Chris Williams or Ron Kay said, "I need you," I'd get on a plane or get in a car now. And we all feel that way. But there's a few things I want to say. Number one, when somebody is coaching and teaching English, he should not ask the other people riding on the bus to the next crew event to grade the papers. Noted, Todd, right? Okay. The second thing is, when we were in Ratzeburg, not only the second day we were rowing against English and Dane crews, and we were a length off, and we were a photo finish. The ball of the ship was ahead of us for fourth place, and we moved on all of those crews the second day in that borrowed shell, and it was gorgeous. The third thing is, the next day we practiced with Ratzeburg, the guys that were going to win the Olympics. And when we started at 40 and settled at 40, the 7-man is saying to Chris, saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And we held them almost to the 500-meter mark. They were doing thousands. We were only doing 500s. The last thing, well, maybe not the last, but I'll stop here, is a lot of you remember Howard Johnson's on the way back from the away races. And the whole bus would stop at Howard Johnson's. Ice cream, right? That was the only thing we were allowed as a suite. And hand-packed pints. And we'd be looking for the person that had the strongest wrist to pack it in the most. So not only do I appreciate this event, but and appreciate all of you, but I think that we are bonded in a special way that is really wonderful, and I will take that to the grave. I don't want to take it to the grave yet, but I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Hey, Chris, I've got Bob DeRue on the line, and if he wants to say anything, I can hold the phone up. But Bob, are you there?
Yeah, that'd be great. I actually would love to transition to 68.
Yeah, he was in both the 67 and 68. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, no, he's perfect. Oops, what happened there? There we go. I know many of you have enjoyed a pint of Purity ice cream pre-post race, post weigh-ins. I think ice cream is a tradition. But if I may, just this is kind of the final frame here for 68. A crew that The selection came later. They were third at sprints. There was a Harry Parker story about how the Harvard crew caught a crab in the heats and Houston walked in and got them a lane 7 in the grand final, and they ended up winning. And boy, that has there are many people in that race with their nose bent out of shape. Not only Cornellians, Princetonians, who I've heard about that decision and that thing, but 68, Bob DeRue, are you there? And Chuck, I'm gonna add you in at the end. Chuck Bunting, go ahead, Bob DeRue.
I can only add that I rode in the 67 and the 68. I get choked up when I think about it. It's an amazing part of my life. I wish I've retained the efforts that we had through the rest of my life, and still maintain my fitness level, and I'm ready to go anytime you want to get in the boat. Yeah, I'm done.
Outstanding.
Thanks, Bob.
Is Rose on?
Chris, can you hear me?
Right.
Yeah, it's Frank Rose here. I was bow in 67 and 5 and 68. Bob was just on the line. One of my fondest, when I'm thinking about 67, I'm thinking about Bob Drew's back, because I was watching Bob Drew's back that whole season. And when I think about the dynamics of the boat, you know, I think of Bob's back, I think of Bill Cromwell's oar, I think of Dennis Koza's oar, I think of Al Hoist's oar, and I think of Bob DeRue's back. That's what kept me going that year. And 68, Bob was behind me. He was in 2 again. But what a wonderful oarsman. And I'm glad he got on and said a few things.
Thanks a lot, Frank. I really appreciate it. As we close down these 2 decades and this town hall, which is getting on to be an hour and 15 minutes. Chuck, would you like to say something, Chuck Bunting, about Henley to close up? You're muted, Chuck.
I would very much like to say something. Listening to all these people talk about Henley and thinking back to when I had the opportunity to go to Henley reminds me of a fantastic story. My wife knew nothing about rowing. For some reason, we had an opportunity to be in Henley in 2011, which is my 50th anniversary of rowing at Henley. And I told my wife, we're going to go to Henley. And I warned her that you're going to have to take some very fancy clothes, because when you go to Henley, you got to be dressed up. You got to be wearing this fancy hat. You've got to be dressed exactly right. And my wife looked at me and said, essentially, bullshit. But she kind of listened and took some clothing along. And when we showed up at Henley, she was wearing what I suggested would make her an acceptable participant in watching Henley. And she looked at it and she said, this is unbelievable. And it just reminds me that Henley is such a beautiful, wonderful tradition for long, long time. The opportunity to go to Henley is just you can't. Listening to all these people talk about it makes me realize that, boy, was I lucky to go to Henley. Thank you very much.
And thank you all very much. Bill Brumstead and myself have been at Henley 5 out of the last 7 years, not only with crews that have won the sprints or the IRA, but also development crews. That extra month of training is so crucial these days, that month of June, that time together without the books. I can't thank you guys enough. All of the winning crews stand on your shoulders. One of the great stories, Ross Bernstein, who is in the 92 crew, he spoke about that year last month. And he said those 67 guys came back when we had won, and they were a part, you know, the reunion and the June, the preparation for Henley. And he said that was very, very impactful. We stood on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
And we continue to stand on your shoulders. So I wanted to remark about that. I wanted to hand the microphone over to Bruce Rogoff, who is the head of our the head of the CRA board. He's a coxswain from 1979, a lightweight, who's heading up this amazing ball of energy, the alums. And I told him I would give him the microphone for a few minutes, and then maybe we take the microphone off and we just have a chat. Anybody wants to stay, we'll keep the lines open. People can talk about different things. I think it's a giant reunion. I can send this recording out to everybody, and you all can share in it and maybe reconnect with people you haven't seen in so many years. But Bruce, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Chris. This was an incredibly special evening. Thank you all for allowing us to watch and listen in. And for those of you that don't get all of the emails around the fundraising, I want to report that, as Chris said at the beginning, we achieved our goal in fundraising for the year, which is remarkable in this day and age, in this particular environment. As of yesterday, we were a couple of donors short of our unique donor goal. So if you have a chance and you want to make a donation before the end of the night, I'll forward along on the chat how you can do that online. But it's been a remarkable event. And if you look at the Cornell website, the rowing lightweight website, it says that the program was started in 1920. So this is the 100th anniversary, and I was wondering if there's anybody on the call that was here then. One of the things that I've been doing the last couple of years is trying to encourage participation in the fundraising. So I care less about the aggregate dollars, but the participation rate. My goal has been to reduce the average contribution per person by increasing the denominator. And what I've done is gone after the graduating class and the recent grads and say, make a donation of $20.20, $20.17 for the class of 2017. Because one thing I learned about oarsmen is if you teach them to do one thing, they do it over and over and over again. And the idea is, and I've asked them to leave a series of breadcrumbs that they can follow to get back to the boathouse. And this, if they're not on the call right now, but if they listen to the recording, this is why I encourage them to do that. Because 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, you can do what David, I think it was Chuck or David said, if I get a call from one of the guys in my boat and say, hey, can you come here tomorrow? I need a hand. I know I have 8 people showing up at my doorstep. And it was that experience that I had and all of you had that I want to get people to remember, not only while they're at school, but for the decades thereafter. So again, thank you all for tonight. Thank you all for your support of the program over the past decades, and for everybody that participated this year in the fundraising. Thanks for helping us achieve the goal.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you all. The other great report from 240 Renwick Drive is my home. My wife has turned in her dissertation to become a doctor, and that has been a journey that many have had a touch point too. Not many have seen what the household, raising 2 children, dogs, seasons. She's leading the Masters of Public Health program at the vet school. I just wanted to give my wife a big shout out. And
I had a hand in that early on when she was just starting in 2001, right?
Yep, she went to one of Chris Mabley's class at the school he was teaching at, Nobles in Greeno. She did a program on anti-smoking. So thank you, Chris, for volunteering your great charges so that Jen Meredith could be where she is today. I just wanted to unmute everybody, and if people wanted to catch up with each other, it's a fun time of the evening to do that. Keith, is there any other house business that we need to deal with here? Keith, or maybe
I don't think so. I have this all recorded. If you missed any of it or you want to relive it, it'll be available soon once I download it and re-upload it. And I'm sure Chris Kerber, Coach Kerber, can send it out via email, the link as well. And again, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this history. It was remarkable, and it certainly reminds me of what I do to continue to make this experience available to new generations. So, and thank you for all making that happen as well.
Thank you, Keith. And I don't know if Todd Kennett, the director of rowing of Cornell Rowing, is still on. Love to hand him the microphone to end the evening. If he is on, I know we all have commitments, and maybe he's not. Has anybody seen him? Todd Kennett?
He was on earlier, I saw him, but not at the moment.
So I'd like to say something. As a coxswain for 4 years, I raced, and there's nothing like it when the boat is in a groove and you have men who are pulling like crazy and like a ballet dancer together. And I can remember just shouting, "Eyes in the boat, eyes in the boat." And Bill Burke, who I sat next to for 4 years, would smile.
Jim, that's a great piece there. Thank you very much.
I want to pop in for a second and thank you, Chris Kerber, for paying attention to the alums, but incorporating us so that we feel that we've never really left the program. As I've told you separately, you're coaching, but you're also developing character in a group of young men, and that is something not to be taken lightly, and at least on my part, extremely much appreciated. So thanks for doing that.
One quick question for Frank Rose, if he's still on. In 1967, I painted 150 BMA on the Leander brick wall after we
You're the one.
Did you see it in 68, or had they eliminated it?
You could see the remnants of it still on the wall there in 68. They'd tried to get rid of it, but they couldn't get rid of all of it.
Oh, well. I owned one of those lighthouses on Cayuga Lake, and I figured, why not?
You have any accomplices?
Yes, there was. Frank, was it you?
No, I wasn't an accomplice.
That might have been Denny Koza then.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, defacing things. Oh well. Great to hear everybody.
Chris Mabley, you still in Austin during the winter?
Yes, I love Austin, but not in July. And I love New Hampshire, but not in January. So.
And is Bob Matthews still on? He said he's in Uvalde County.
Bob, are you on the ranch?
He's muted. Unmute yourself, Bob.
Yes, I think yes, I've been here. Frankie and I have been here since mid-March.
And which town?
I guess it Canepa or Sabinal. So
Are you near Uvalde itself, the town?
we're about 14 miles from there.
Yeah. We've got at their farm and ranch store, forget the name of it, we got one of our houses for sale there. So if you ever go in there, you see this big rig house. It's painted green now. You've probably seen it.
Yeah, well, I do business with the farm store, so.
Yeah, Don Eason, I think is
yeah.
the owner. Yeah.
Oh,
Small world.
You really. And what do you? Hey, Craig.
Hey,
That you?
Bob. Yeah, I'm here.
Good.
Good
to see
you're
you.
looking great.
Yeah. I was thinking when they were talking about the '63 Hindley, our hitchhiking to the European rowing championships in Lucerne.
Yeah, you remember sleeping out in the wheat field in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I remember when the farmer sicked his dogs on us.
Those were great times.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we had one where we got kicked out of the Tuborg Brewery about 3 weeks after winning Henley. Chris knows about that.
Yeah, I did. 14 was apparently the limit.
Well,
Hey, are you
good.
still in touch with Frizz Miller? Frisbee? Jay, you were
Oh, yeah, sorry. I have on and off for 40 years tried to track Frizz Miller down. We were fraternity brothers along with two other lightweight oarsmen.
same
we only did a couple of the highlights,
Yeah,
but I think it went really
never been able to get a response from him.
I had talked with him in the last year.
You did?
Yes, so he was my best man.
Really? Well, what
That was my cooking show.
I would appreciate it, David, for you to send whatever contact information you might have. I had given up some years ago trying to track Frizz down. He and I were across the hall freshman year. We each had single rooms there in one of the U-Halls. We both joined the same fraternity, ATO, across the street, if you will. And he's been a hard guy to get a hold of.
He's been a little remote, I agree. But when I was a freshman spare, I didn't make weight, and he took me to the YMCA in Worcester, and we went through 5 times the steam room till I finally made weight.
Yeah,
He was dedicated to doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I know he liked that year of coaching. But yeah, the guy, he was from Rockford, Illinois, where he hailed from.
I just saw on the screen that Dick Bluestein is with us, and Dick, I want to reach out to you and say how glad I am to see you on the screen, and I hope you're doing well. I have very fond memories of our times facing each other for 2 years.
I'll pop in on that. I introduced Dick Bluestein to, I think it was a girlfriend of mine at the time, with great awe. Said, "This is Dick Bluestein. He's the Cox of the varsity, team." And he turned around and looked and said, "Yeah, I'm also a person." So, very humbling. It was a perfect reply.
And I want to tell a story about Dick Bluestein in junior year, as we start, or maybe it was senior year, I'm not sure which one, when we started to walk past Harvard, instead of calling out, I've got the stroke seat, give me the 7. I've got the 7, give me the 6-man. He had memorized the names of all the oarsmen in the Harvard boat. And he said, I've got Galen Brewster, give me the Jay Powell. And he tipped his megaphone to the left so that it was really directed at them rather than us. Classic coxing.
Well, Ron, why didn't you do that?
No, that was Dick's thing. We talked about that a couple of times, but that was all him.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd say we were always out front, so it wasn't a problem.
You coached us so well, Ron. You know, you were absolutely a full ninth person in that boat.
Well, again, I said it earlier. I mean, about 2 weeks after the sprints, there was nothing left to do except have fun. I mean, there wasn't. I mean, it just was a blast after that. Everybody was about as good as they were going to get.
Yeah, that was fun because, particularly we had so many seniors. That was all we did was row, eat, sleep.
Yeah.
Row, eat, sleep. 2-a-days, and the water was flat. It was a phenomenal time. And the others that have gone ahead, they realize that too.
Well,
particularly when you're a senior, you don't have to worry about anything except getting drafted.
I think Bluestein signed off here, so allow me one more coxswain's insight. I mean, I never said this before, but that boat could do anything. I mean, I could do anything. We could sprint, we could start, we could row through the middle, we could go up, we could go down, but the boat never lost its spacing, never lost its rhythm. You could do anything you want in that boat, and everybody responded, and speed never disappeared.
Guys, I'm going to sign off. It's been a wonderful hour and a half with you guys and down memory lane. Chris Kerber, thank you so much for organizing this. And
no problem. No problem at all. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks for all the contributions. The impromptu calls, Chris Williams, Chris Mabley getting me those photos last minute. Natalie, thanks for Todd for his impromptu contributions there. Same with Jay. Some people like the microphone, some people don't. But Craig, I have a question for you. Craig Underwood.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Coach Brumstead and I are in a competition for growing tomatoes this summer. He's having a groundhog problem. Poor guy. He's got a crossbow, and he said he was going to contact you about perhaps some eradication. I don't have any problems in my garden. I'm a slow starter with my vines, but at the end of the summer, we have a New York State farmer father of one of our coxswains who's going to be the judge.
So, Chris, do you want me to ship tomatoes back there so you can substitute mine for yours?
Sounds good.
Keep them on the vine. Don't take them off the vine.
So, Craig, you still growing jalapeno peppers?
Yeah, not the scale we were, Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still growing them. Much smaller scale. You need to go out and buy our hot sauce.
Yeah, I already have. It was in a central market in Austin.
Yeah. We'd like to have a little broader sales than that, so keep buying.
Okay.
Hey, guys. Chris, thanks for organizing this.
Hey, Jay.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
DMA.
Good seeing everybody.
See y'all.
Hey, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Chris, I'm going to say thank you and sign out. It's always good to talk to you guys, and good luck in the coming season. It's been a while since you've been on the water.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. Bob, thanks for coming on. Bob Matthews.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
See you, Bob.
Okay. See you, Craig.
Thanks, Chris.
Good night. Say hello to your bride, Jane.
Will do.
No, she's got another name.
Sarah Jane.
Sarah Jane. Of course. Well, we're going to go celebrate getting that dissertation in. And man, let me tell you about a long journey, 400 pages.
Well done.
Indeed.
Well done.
The enduring spirit of a rower from Canada and her husband. Anyway, good night, Natalie. Good night, Craig. I think Frank Rose is still on. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know he's still on, but thank you so much for everything.
Night, Chris.